All right, Donald Trump refuses to stop attacking people. And I'm sure he was in a really bad mood yesterday because it was announced that his apparent coup had failed. Donald Trump was trying to silence Jimmy Kimmel. That's what we'd been led to believe. He was using the power of the FCC and other entities to squash free speech for Jimmy Kimmel and others. And yet Jimmy Kimmel returns to the airwaves tonight. So I don't know. Is Trump feckless? Is Trump? I don't know. Well, you know what? Maybe we'll have time to talk about that a little bit later. But because maybe he was in a bad mood, that's why he decided to take on a new target. And yesterday announced that they have seen enough at the Trump administration. They want mothers to know, potential mothers to know, that there appears to be a link between the use of Tylenol while pregnant and the soaring rates of autism. Well, it didn't take very long for the the people who receive the $100 million a year in advertising, that would be the news outlets, to circle the wagons and say there's no proof of that. This is CNN medical correspondent Meg Terrell.
Previously done studies kind of analyze the existing data, and the result of that was kind of mixed. And what they said was that it appeared from their analysis there was an association potentially between use of acetaminophen or Tylenol during pregnancy and neurodevelopmental disorders like autism or ADHD, but that they couldn't prove a causative relationship there. So you can say
that's the key. There's a potential association, but there is not a direct link or cause.
Boy, the news anchor herself felt the need to jump in there with commentary. It's important for you to know there's no link. Not that they can prove. And you know what? She's actually right. She is right, because you can't do what they would consider to be a legit study on this, meaning you can't take 5,000 pregnant women, take 2,500 of them, and force them to take Tylenol, and then take the other 2,500 and give them, some sort of placebo, and then see what the results are. That's considered unethical, so they're not going to ever do that study. And so all they were able to do is you've got over 30 studies that have looked at results of mothers that they knew took Tylenol, and there was a huge increase in the group that took Tylenol while pregnant. And it's important to know there was others that took aspirin instead of Tylenol and didn't get the same soaring rates of autism. Now, the FDA Commissioner, Martin Makary, he wants to come on out and try to plead his case to ABC News.
Well, look, the studies that have said when a woman has a very high-grade fever that could have an adverse outcome on the baby, it may be due to the underlying reason for the fever, that is the infection, and not the fever itself. What we do know for a fact right now, Kana, is that acetaminophen has been given willy-nilly way too frequently without any discussion of the potential risks to balance out those discussions about the potential benefit. And we're just saying we want this body of scientific evidence now to be a part of that informed consent so that individuals can engage in proper shared decision making. And you did cite the 2024 study from overseas that did not find an association. That was one of the 4 studies that was not favorable. 27 studies did find an association. So I would say this: when you have an epidemic of autism exploding in our living generation, it was rare a generation ago. It's now 1 in 12 boys in California, and we have no known cause. And you have this overwhelming body of evidence pointing to an association. Why would we take a risk with our nation's kids?
Well, because, we get $100 million a year to take that risk at the media. And, the makers of Tylenol are making legit billions of dollars annually off of it. And they don't want to lose their billions. That's why you take a risk. But you know what? To me, this is beyond greed. Because, again, these studies have been done over the last few years. If I was Tylenol, if I was the head of Tylenol, that's probably why I will never be the president of any kind of drug company. If I had seen this research, I probably would have said, can we put a warning on our box that there may be a link between taking our product while pregnant and autism? There may be a link. Just put that kind of a warning on it. Because what is the percentage of our sales that comes actually from pregnant women? I'm assuming it's like almost 50-50 men, women. And then of the women, how many of them are pregnant? It would seem to be a very small percentage of their sales would come from pregnant women. But even that, we cannot risk. So you got 27 studies that show a link, 4 that don't believe it. Take it to global warming. Barack Obama famously tweeted out in 2013 that 97% of scientists now agree that at that time it was called global warming. Global warming is real and man-made and very dangerous. Well, I do love the headline that the Fraser Institute came out with a couple of years later that said, putting the con in consensus. And they pointed out that of the 97% of published scientific studies supporting man-made global warming, 66% actually took no position on man-made contributions. So they took no position. They then were interpreted as they had taken a position. How could that what? Yes, 66% took no position of the 34%, of the remaining 34%, 33% of those said it was at least a weak human contribution to global warming. By the way, we no longer call it global warming. You can tell I'm talking about a bygone era. It's now climate change. But either way, the overwhelming majority of scientists back in 2013 did not believe that it was human beings contributing to global warming, but that position was flipped because if I can get you to believe that you are the problem, then I can tax you, I can control your behaviors. That's always what governments want. They want to control the populace. What do advertisers want? They want the most bang for their bucks. What do media companies want? More advertisers. It's all works together. All right. This is a three-legged stool right here, and you cannot take away one of the legs. So we're going to rally the troops to make sure that we can get our advertising dollars. And, let me just also take you back to smoking. The first studies linking smoking to lung cancer were done in the 1930s. Then in 1950, we had what was considered at the time a landmark study done in the United States. Winder and Graham overwhelmingly proved in their sample size that there was a link between smoking and increased lung cancer rates. Dahl and Hill in the United Kingdom did the almost exact same study, got the almost exact same results. So as early as 1950, there was overwhelming evidence in the scientific community. When did you get your first potential warnings? It was more than 15 years later. For 15 years, Joe Cool and Lucky Strike and the Marlboro Man were able to buy protection from the media. They didn't want that link to be made. And then even after, they had to start, because the Attorney General started making them put warnings on this stuff, they were able to still have people question that on television because they did not want to lose the revenue. That's what it's always been about. But I don't want to go any further because I cannot wait to hear what Jimmy Kimmel has to say about all of this tonight.